Alex here with a video on legal nuts and bolts. The topic is going to be overcoming lies and moving forward. These topics go hand in hand. In fact, one of them inspired the other. So, a very recent discussion I had with somebody who needed help involved a multitude of child custody issues. Again, this is a legal nuts and bolts video. It applies to any kind of court case, not just custody, but this particular person had a hearing coming up, and they were focused on pretty much their entire argument was addressing a bunch of lies that they say the court believed in the past. This isn't the first time I've seen this, and that's why I'm doing a video on this. The angle, so I've been very successful with appeals, and one of the angles that I began to adopt going forward is if you can't appeal it, let it go. It's a harsh thing if you can, or if you choose not to appeal it. If you can appeal something and you choose not to, you just have to accept it and move forward. The court, this has happened to me before. There have been some times where I could have appealed something and chose not to. There have been some appeals, especially the ones very early on in the case where I lost, and it's just mainly it had to do with the court's findings of fact, which I mentioned in my previous videos. If you haven't seen them yet, check out the video on standard of review and filing an appeal. The findings of fact that the court makes are entitled, the judge is entitled to deference. The Supreme Court isn't going to replace their own understanding of the facts with, they aren't going to replace your judge's findings and understandings of the facts with their own. They don't do that. They don't care if 3 or 4 witnesses said one thing and one witness said the other. They don't care if this witness seems like they might be more believable and that witness doesn't. They don't look at that. They call it reweighing the testimony of the witnesses. They do not do that. And a lot of people, they have a big beef with this. They come in and they say, my ex lied and I was more believable and here's why. Or I had 3 witnesses and the judge ignored them. Or they had 1 witness, but I had my whole family there, and the judge ignored all of us and believed their 1 witness. They don't. The Supreme Court doesn't do that. If there was no witnesses at all, if there was no assertion and no witnesses, and by the way, you count as a witness to your own case, and so does your ex. So if the judge believed something your ex said, that counts as testimony, and that counts as substantial evidence. Hate to say it, but it does, and you can't win on appeal when the court's findings of fact are supported by substantial evidence that includes what your ex has stated. If it's supported by nothing, if the judge makes a finding and there's nothing to support it, nobody said anything on it, you can win an appeal on that issue. But that is so rare. Usually that's not what it is. Usually somebody's upset that their ex lied and the judge believed it. If you can't, it doesn't matter. If you can't appeal it or you choose not to, you just have to let it go and move forward. If you find yourself going to your next hearing and you're obsessing over trying to prove a bunch of lies from the past that aren't true, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to get nowhere fast. And I don't know. I think this may have to do with people being accustomed to how they argue in their social interactions. Like maybe if like a brother or a sister lies and they want to fight about it with their parents, or a coworker lies and they want to fight about it with their boss. Court does not work the way that your other interactions in life work. Court has a very systematic, procedural way of thinking, and court moves forward. It doesn't move back. There's very few ways in which you can force the court to go back and fix something from the past. One of those is the appeal. If you get an order reversing from the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, that is one of the few ways that you can force the court to go back and fix something. There's almost no other way to do it. There's a few other ones I might discuss in other videos, a few curious oddities in the rules of civil procedure where you can sort of go back even though a Supreme Court or a Court of Appeals hasn't ordered it. I'm not going to cover that here. The main principle, the main thing I'm trying to get through people's heads is that court moves forward, and you have to go into these battles, whether it's child custody or something else, thinking that way. That, okay, if some things have been believed in the past and they weren't true, you just have to you have to just, this is one of the reasons why lawyers are so much better than a non-lawyer, because sometimes a non-lawyer, a regular person, just can't get past this. They're just so pissed off that their ex lied and the court believed it, and they just can't let it go. And it's like I said, it becomes just like a crazy obsession. And you just and what sucks is sometimes you may actually be able to win a hearing, but you were so focused on the stuff from the past that you ended up losing it because you just weren't reacting, you weren't on your toes to the things that were being asserted in the hearing you're at right now. That you missed all these things and you could have won, but because you were just all about the past and the lies from the past and all that, you lost, and it sucks when I see that happen, but I do see it happen. So again, I said this video, I mean, it goes hand in hand, dealing with lies and the court moves forward. These two topics go hand in hand because a lot of times what people are trying to fix from the past is things that they feel are unfair because they were based on lies. One of the things I did mention in my standard, I think it was the, I can't remember the topic of the video now. It had something to do with getting explanations. I think that was the topic, getting explanations. One of the things that people think is a lot of times the court makes rulings based on lies. And I check out my getting explanations video on top of the other videos I mentioned, the standard of review and filing an appeal. Check out my getting explanation videos because a lot of times people think that the court made a ruling against them because the court believed lies. And a lot of times it's not true. A lot of times the court made a decision based on some legal factors that people don't know about, and they just assume that they lost because the court believed lies. So it's like sometimes you may think that you have to address some lies from the past, and you really don't, because that wasn't the basis of a decision in the first place. And this is another, if you can figure out the way the court is working in a legally, if you can understand sort of what is legally relevant, it's a lot easier to let your ex's or your opponent's lies go when they're actually not relevant, and you know they're not relevant. So this happened in my case a lot, especially towards the end where I started to understand what mattered legally. And my ex would make a bunch of lies. She wouldn't lie to everything. I don't want to say that my ex lied all the time. She actually didn't. If she thought that I could prove something, she usually would tell the truth. But the point I'm trying to make here is she would make some lies, and they weren't legally relevant to the case. And so rather than me go angry and try to like confront these lies, I just let them go because they weren't, the lies didn't factor into what was in front of the court. One of these actually was not a child custody case. It was when my car was towed and I sued the property owner who towed my car, and they were arguing about my car being in front of a different store, which was a lie. And I just told the court, you know what, under the statute, they need to have signs posted. And the place that they're saying my car was doesn't have signs either. So I'm not even going to confront their lie. I don't need to. We could just assume they're telling the truth and it still doesn't matter because under the law, there was no signs posted. That's the kind of thinking that wins. So sometimes you do have to confront a lie. Sometimes it's relevant, but not always. So I hope that people can take away 2 or 3 different lessons from this video. The first lesson is, if a lie isn't relevant to whatever's in front of the court, let it go. The second thing is, if the court believed the lie and it was relevant, and it was supported by substantial evidence, which, I mean, if there's a lie in court, somebody has to have said something. So as I said, testimony counts as substantial evidence. If basically, if the court believes a lie and it's supported by substantial evidence, there's nothing you can do about it. Let it go and move forward. And then the third lesson, which I actually haven't gotten to yet, I have found that the best way to win a case is to focus on your own truths. This is where the third lesson's coming from. Sometimes the best way to beat a lie or a false truth, whatever, is with your own better, more relevant truth. I'm not saying better because you're more believable, even though that does help. It helps to be more believable. I'm saying better because, setting aside who's more believable, if you bring to the court and you assert issues that are more important than the ones that your ex is focused on, you can win that way. Usually, it's a lot more reliable, and um, it just makes you look like you're not devolving down to the into the petty squabble that most people devolve into. And this is not just child custody cases. A lot of small claims cases, regular cases, people just, especially you're representing yourself, emotions run high, and the court's expecting it to just devolve into like a really petty, low level, just whirlwind of emotion style of case. If you're able to say, you know what, Your Honor, that's not true, but here's something that's more important that I'm going to assert, that ends up being more effective. I mean, if I can think of a few examples. Oh, I can't. Okay, so in one of my cases, my child custody case, my modification of physical custody, my ex's entire focus, the whole hearing on modification of physical custody, was trying to show that I was a liar. That was her whole case. And from beginning to end, every person that she questioned, me, the dentist, my wife, it was always trying to find some conniving, clever, sneaky way to show that we were just in a conspiracy to like just concoct this thing out of thin air, which wasn't true. But that was her entire focus. And when I presented my side of the story, I didn't need to go and say, look how dishonest she is, look how sneaky she is. I just focused on the big issues. His teeth are falling out. He's not getting taken to school. I was asserting major, central to best interest of the child style of allegations. And I was backing up my allegations with my testimony, my witnesses, and my evidence. And the whole time, her focus was on, look at all these terrible lies. He's a liar. You can't believe him. And it doesn't work. She lost. And two of the other cases that I've seen videos on, both times, I noticed that the people who lost were doing the exact same thing that she was doing. It was just this round and round and round and round and round merry-go-round of all of these things from the past, all of these lies that they said had happened. In both of these cases, they lost. And I really want, it's hard to do when you're representing yourself because it's just so close to you that somebody is saying things that aren't true, and to think that you just have to let them go, some people just can't fathom it. And I'm hoping that by tying these two issues together, it makes a lot more sense. Confronting the lies, I understand where that's coming from, but court is going to move forward, and just you have to focus everything that you're doing on the present. So, paying attention to what's going on now, whether it's in your hearing or in your motion practice, your goals going forward, and the solution going forward. I'm going to cover some of those quirky areas where you can sort of go back in time and address issues, but if you think, a lot of people think that they're the exception. If you think you're the exception, if you think this video doesn't apply to you, if you think you have your ex red-handed in a lie from the past, if you think you've got him now, I've seen people say this all the time. They think they've got it red-handed, and I hear what they have to say, and I'm just like, it's not really that solid. So if you really want to go into court thinking that, I think you should check with some people who aren't connected to you and see what they think. If you can get a consultation with an attorney and you think you can prove fraud or fraud on the court, talk to a lawyer about it. You'll get a sobering answer. If you really have something that they think is, dead to rights proof, I guess bring it up and go forward with it, but take it from someone who's been into court. So I've lost count how many times I've been at a hearing, and that's just not how I've won my hearings. That's, it just doesn't work. So try not to despair, because if you despair, your morale is going to get low and you're just not going to do a good job. Try to see, look at the bright side. You're going into court on some new issues. The ones in the past, you're just going to have to let them go. Pay close attention to how you can win now, what you can assert now. And as I mentioned, if you can't win by showing that something from the past is false, focus instead on showing that something from the present is true. Something bigger, something more important, something that actually matters to your child's best interest or to your case if it's not a child custody case. With that, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. It's going to be a tough video for people to swallow. Go ahead and post a comment if you need to. Send me an email. With that, I will end this video. See you guys next time.